Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber, and you're very welcome to this, the first of our Building Belfast Back Better series. The aim of this series of 4 events, which are going to take place over the next number of weeks, is to showcase some of the major infrastructure and redevelopment projects that are in the pipeline and will become a reality right across Belfast over the next number of years. We know, particularly so this week, that it's a tough time for Belfast and many businesses. And I know how difficult it is for many of you who are on this call and lots of our members right across the city. But we are also know, I think, that Belfast still has a very bright future ahead of us, and our hope in this series is to shine a spotlight on a few of those big projects that will help to build Belfast back better. We're very pleased at Belfast Chamber to be able to deliver this series of events in partnership with our friends and members at Power NI. And I'm very glad that we are joined this morning by Power NI's Key Account Manager, Ian Fraser, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everyone. I'd just like to reiterate the words Simon has spoken, and as sponsor of this event, put on record our thanks to Simon and the whole team at the Belfast Chamber for the organisation of this and the series of events. It was clearly a very difficult time for everybody. Power and I are delighted to be sponsoring this series of events. I, like you, are looking forward to hearing what the panel of experts have to say on these very significant infrastructure projects, their impact for Belfast city centre, and also for the wider economy. I'll keep it simple, but my role within Power NI is to engage with businesses across all sectors. And this is an open invite for you all to make contact with me in the coming days and weeks if you would like to hear about Power NI's 100% green electricity offering. Thank you for your time, and back to you, Simon.
Ian, thank you very much. And on behalf of Belfast Chamber, I want to again thank you and Power NI for your support for this series of events, and it wouldn't be possible without you, and we look forward to working with you very closely over the next couple of weeks. We're also very pleased that the first event in our series is focused on the new Ulster University campus right in the heart of Belfast. As it will have escaped no one's attention, this scheme is very much on the ground, and it's, I think it's fair to say that it's set to be the single biggest regeneration boost to the city in at least and perhaps more than a generation. I'm delighted that we are joined by someone who has been involved with this scheme since the very, very start. I'm tempted to say an old friend of mine, but he might remove himself from this meeting if I call him that. An old friend of mine, Professor Alastair Adair from Ulster University. Before Alastair starts, I just want to highlight that we are hoping to be able to have a very good interactive session later on with a number of questions that Alastair is prepared to answer. So there's a question and answer function at the bottom of your bottom of the screen that everyone can post a question. Please do so. I'll try to collate those as we go through and put as many of them as we possibly can to Alastair at the end. So Alastair, over to you. The floor is yours, and we're looking forward to hearing more about this very exciting project. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be presenting this Building Back Better and to update you on our new Belfast campus and the opportunities which it presents for our students and for our staff, for the city and for the businesses in the city. The contents of our talk this morning, I'll be covering the vision of what we want this new campus to achieve, then more details on the new Belfast campus, and looking at how it connects into the city, but also how it connects globally and how it provides an inclusive environment. And then we'll finish off with a number of photographs, a gallery of photographs. So turning to the vision and the first slide of the Belfast Strategic Vision, I hope you can see that we have a quotation there by John Galsworthy, who is an English novelist who wrote the Forsyth Saga, which is a rather steamy account of the goings-on in high society. And with that novel, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And his quote is very informative, because he says, if you don't think about your future, you cannot have one. So planning for the future, whether it's a university, whether it's a city, whether it's a business, is very important. And when you look at the left-hand slide, there you will see a southern view of Royal Avenue, looking at the construction of the City Hall over 100 years ago. And there is an iconic image, which today is broadcast around the world as one of the iconic images of Belfast, Royal Avenue looking down to the City Hall. And you will also see, rather strangely, that some things never change, because the street is flooded when that photograph was taken. But then at the other end of Royal Avenue, we now have the new emerging Ulster University campus, which, as Simon has said, you cannot fail to miss it when you're in that part of the city, because it has altered the skyline in the city, bringing new life, creating an iconic building, an iconic image that future generations will look at and say, this has been a vision for this part of the city. But then turning to what that vision actually means, I imagine that some of you may be asking yourselves, well, why is the university doing this? Why is it moving from Jordanstown into Belfast? And the answer to that is very simple, because 15 years ago in 2006, every university in the United Kingdom was audited for on the quality of its estate. The biggest risk in Northern Ireland higher education was the replacement of the Jordanstown campus, because that campus, single glazing, poor insulation, can't meet modern insulation and carbon footprint requirements. So back in 2007, we asked our students and our staff, what did they want to do? And they said they wanted to move back into the centre of Belfast. They wanted a campus which is described in this wordle. They want a campus that is student-centric, that's an exemplar of best practice, best higher education practice, that's flexible, that is sustainable, outward-looking, forward-thinking, has a strong identity, and is a beacon within the city. And how we've translated that into our vision in terms of an innovative, inclusive, and transformative environment that will stimulate, inspire our students, and add value to our core activities of teaching and learning, research, and innovation. And we see how we're going to achieve that through state-of-the-art teaching and learning experiences. Big lecture theatres are still required in modern education, but increasingly it's small group working, giving students space to work individually, collaboratively, creating a learning environment that stimulates, building a thriving campus community where there's a sense of belonging, what we often call a sticky campus, where people want to stay on a 24/7 basis. It's also about removing barriers, taking teaching out of the classroom and sharing our knowledge with the wider community. I've always laughed when I think about one of the leading business people in the city, Eric Kearns, who headed up one of the major estate agencies. And Eric would go to teach the students at Queen's in business studies. And he would always tell them that the closest he ever got to Queen's was passing it in the bus, because very often universities are seen to be behind walls, behind railings, behind gateways. And when I go out and speak to the communities in Belfast, very often I'm told, you wouldn't want us in there, not in a university. So we have big barriers, big conceptual barriers to remove. We also need to meet student expectations, creating student experiences which match expectations and reflect changing student lifestyles, because students now want to live in the area around their campus. And we want to build meaningful connections with the city, with the communities, with the businesses, and creating a community campus right in the centre of Belfast. And all of that means that we want this to be a first choice destination, creating a campus for all with public access and collaborative spaces. I just want to ask you the question, when you think of a university, there's no single category of a university. Universities have common features like teaching, like research about how they engage with businesses. In the same way as there's no single category of a city, and in the sense that cities have similar functions, but their history and their vision and their mission will differ. And the design of the campus is very important, because that is what unites a university with its place. The sense of place gives us a better understanding of how the university acts with the businesses and with the communities around it. And that is why the campus is so important, because the campus can give a university a competitive edge, attracting students and talent. And that is why we're saying this campus is a game changer, not only for the university, but also for the city and for the businesses. You see how we're delivering this, the new educational approach delivered by digitization, a smart environment. But very importantly, when you look at the civic community, we see a partnership approach, and that is what we want to develop, working with business and developing the nighttime economy, opportunities for this new population. Increasingly, the young people who will live around that city centre, the purpose-built student accommodation, and that has been one of the major changes in the skyline, and developing a healthy, active campus and city. We are still on target for opening in September 2021, and this is being kept under constant review in light of COVID-19. And construction has remained open and in operation throughout the pandemic. And this is one of the lovely little nuances which people often don't realize. The principal contractor in this is a Portuguese firm, SOMAG, which is owned by a Spanish multinational, Secur. And in the first wave of the pandemic, people in Portugal and Spain, if they went home, they would have to be in isolation for a month. And consequently, those Portuguese and Spanish people who are working on the site, they didn't go home. And so the work continued. And while other sites were closing, our site continued. Numbers were reduced on site, but the work continued. So looking at the new Belfast campus and turning to the transition that we're now experiencing from a major building site, and this is one of our schematics of what it looked like when we started, but this is now the development of a new living campus. We're seeing it being completed every day. These slides taken last month, and already we can see more of the glass going in and the campus and the area around the campus becoming more alive. And that's reflecting the changes that are within the city, because this is an inner city investment and development that's extending Cathedral Quarter into the northern edge of the city centre. 75,000 square meters, the same size as Victoria Square, with 15,000 students and staff. And that is a continuing commitment of the university. The Art College, so affectionately known by the taxi drivers, the founding School of Design, dating back to 170 years. Coincidentally, Queen Victoria, on the same day that she signed into being the Queen's College, now Queen's University, also signed into being the School of Design, the founding school of Ulster University. Open to innovation, working with business, working with industry and the neighbouring communities, and increasing cycling and walking routes, creating this healthy, lively campus. It's been mentioned already that this is one of the most significant regeneration projects in the city since the late 1990s. It's also the most momentous culture change for the university since the establishment of the Polytechnic in 1973, one of the biggest changes within the Greater Belfast area. and indeed the most important change to the university since its foundation in the current form in 1984. A major regeneration project like this has a multiplier of about 1 to 5, and that is well known within economic studies, so that for every £1 of public money that is invested, there is a multiplier of 5. So when you consider this project £350 million, there will be over £1 billion flowing into this area, and that is demonstrated by the change that has taken place over the past 10 years, and that change will continue, because the magnitude of this change is demonstrated by the fact that this is comparable to moving the population of Armagh, 15,000 people, staff and students, into the city centre. And we want to build connections, create opportunities, and work together. And the location of our campus enables us to do that. We are right in the city centre. Think for a moment, if we were located out in, say, Titanic Quarter, one would have to take a bus into the city centre and then another bus out to Titanic Quarter. But here, this is the apex. This is where all the transport routes lead in. So we're close to retail, to student accommodation, the Belfast Cathedral, the riverfront, the harbour, all of those amenities. And you can see in the slide, the 6th there on the left-hand side, we can see land uses in the top right-hand slide of this slide. And there will be major regeneration opportunities in this area, particularly with this huge number of people. And we're right in the heart of the Belfast jobs, 15% within half a mile of the campus, 4 out of every 10 jobs. And this is the centre of professional services, finance and retail. And when you think that the university sends out 2,000 students every year into placement activity, that is a major way we engage with business. There's also one other point I want to stress, that within half a mile of where we are, we have some of the lowest levels of participation in higher education. And this campus that we're building, it is a campus that seeks to draw in the community and so make higher education relevant to those communities who live round about. The concept that this slide shows is what we call a campus within a building, and that is quite a far-reaching and modern concept. This is like a cut through of the building, a slice right through it. And if I explain it to you, over on the right-hand side at the ground level, that is the principal entrance. And you see there the exhibition space. And that is where the university will be displaying its key teaching and research, but also where there'll be an opportunity for businesses to come in and display activity. And then as we move along the ground floor, we have the 350-seater, the 250-seater major lecture theatres, and they could be used for conferences and breakout rooms. And then at the heart of this, we have the Students' Union. And we've always said we are making a student-centric building, and the students will be in the centre of this. And then moving further along, we have catering opportunities on the ground floor. And that is where businesses, the university will be having businesses providing catering opportunities coming in to the building. And then further along on the left-hand side, we have CEBE, which is Computing, Engineering and Built Environment. We have some departments there. And then moving up, we have these academic fingers, which mirror the hills of Belfast. And you see there that there's Computing, Engineering, Built Environment, there's Arts, Humanities and Social Science, and then above them, the Ulster Business School. And we also have our research spaces, our PhD spaces. And also then on the second floor, we have our library shown in yellow. And that library will be open to the public. And not only will the ground floor and parts of the second floor be open to the public in terms of the library, the idea of bringing in the community. This concept of a campus within a building was one that we had significant challenge with from the planning service, because the planning service at the time, their idea was the university should buy up individual buildings and put the faculties into those. And academics would have loved that, because they could sit in their own building and not engage with anybody else. But here, because one faculty is sitting juxtaposed with another faculty, that is where we get interdisciplinary working taking place and innovation taking place. Our computer scientists working with the arts community, working with the business community. So this campus within a building creates a dynamic energy within the building. So in terms of our global inclusiveness and connectedness, global universities are drivers of innovation and creativity. And that's where businesses collaborate, industry can access expertise, and communities can engage in these tremendous spaces. And it's all about building Belfast's social, cultural, creative, and scientific profile, and bringing that academic excellence into local communities and engaging with local communities. And that is why we're finding that the students want to live close to where the university is. We've seen our purpose-built student accommodation. And when we move to the inclusive and campus design, defined areas for sharing that global experience. Universities are global institutions by their very nature. We have academics working with others right throughout the world. Just as an example of that, at 4 o'clock today, I'll be engaging with academics in the United States, because we're part of this global community in terms of research activity. And the campus is designed to bring in the community, circulation space in that foyer. This is the foyer you see in the photograph as you come in through the principal doors, the main entrance, the stairs leading up to the first floor, and this huge exhibition space, and the atrium in that where that brings in the light right up from the 11th floor. We are an age-friendly university, enabling all the ages from the earliest right up to the oldest, enabling everyone to participate here. And it's about retaining talent, developing and retaining talent. Over 40% of final year students stay in the city where they studied, and that research is well known. Connected into the city, it's interesting that the purple line shows how we're opening up York Lane. York Lane is one of the oldest lanes in Belfast, but in actual fact, it was cut off by the Co-op building and the later Interpoint building. We are now opening that up so that there will be a connection in from Clifton Street, North Queen Street, down York Lane into Curtis Street, right into Cathedral Quarter. And this anchoring of the university in the city and embedding within the city is very important. And that is inclusive for industry and for the city, because this is how we create future employment opportunities. Overall lifestyles are significant drivers of modern student choice. And we see young professionals and entrepreneurs wanting quality, flexible serviced accommodation. And another statistic is that over 50% of the graduates will move from those private purpose-built student accommodation into private rented accommodation. And we have the first of those build to rent accommodation schemes in Academy Street, the Lacuna building. And that is the heralding the growth of co-living experience, and that is happening now. When we look at the impact that this is having on the city in terms of our connection, we see that as has been mentioned, we're creating a new Belfast skyline. We are embedding sustainable transport. We have worked hard with the communities in a community benefit framework, which is addressing specific issues that the communities have in mental health, training, employment, creating community fellows and civic ambassadors who go out and work in those communities. One of the interesting points of this slide is when you look at planning applications, a number of them are clustered around the new campus building. And that is showing that people and business see opportunities for hotels, retail, offices. And there are estimates by our Economic Policy Centre of 5,000 jobs in these activities, in addition to the university. So that connectedness to the city is vitally important, and we're working with a number of strategic partners, including the Belfast Chamber, the City Placemaking, Belfast Agenda, Learning Cities, Healthy Cities, the Belfast Streets Ahead 3, York Street Interchange, all of the ones who are named there, the Belfast Harbour, the City Council, the Developers Forum, all of those businesses that we want to work with and be key partners with. In terms of our connections, there's a real opportunity now of doing things on the ground, and this is an example of it, what we call architects of change. The architects of change, where our architecture staff and students provide training to business leaders, and that is free training taking place in the university. And it's about making Belfast a resilient city in terms of design, planning, construction, climate resilient, net zero carbon buildings and communities. And it's how about shaping Belfast as a smart green city as we move forward. And other examples of how we want to be connected, working with our strategic partners through sponsorships, scholarships, strategic corporate giving, through our alumni, and examples of opportunities for collaboration and joined up thinking in terms of the Belfast Agenda, that nighttime economy. How do we foster that nighttime economy and make it a reality? Pardon me, there are some changes or challenges in terms of parking. We don't want Belfast to become, this area of North Belfast to become another Holy Land like South Belfast, where parking is a real problem. City living. And the Belfast Streets Ahead 3 is a challenge in terms of how do we get money released to improve the public realm in Royal Avenue. So turning then to the gallery of slides, the first one is the entrance foyer, which is open to the public, and that will house exhibitions and events. And then we have this grand cathedral-esque like space, the atrium bringing light down into the first floor level, looking down into the ground floor level. And then on the ground floor, the entrance into our lecture theatres, all of that so very important in terms of the design of the building. We have also a range of areas for socializing and social learning. And students want that social learning spaces, and we have provided that running right through each floor of the building. The library shown in the yellow strand, the social learning spaces shown in the green strand. And those social learning spaces take a number of forms: quiet study areas, project rooms where students can work together, the library, individual study booths, then collaborative study areas, and then informal study areas. So the whole building becomes a social learning space. And this is about making spaces flexible for teaching, for research, and it's about realizing our vision of building meaningful connections, building closer connections with the community, with industry, with business, and making this first choice destination. And this is the new Belfast campus as it's now coming out of the ground. And we often say this is the sneak peek of what the rooms actually look like. This is for the benefit of our staff, primarily showing them the new working environment, and it is it really is an inspiring working environment. You see one of the offices here on the left-hand side, one of the facilities on the right-hand side, and as you walk through this new building, you cannot fail to be inspired. So you will be familiar now with the lantern at the junction of Donegal Street and York Street, and the front there, that main entrance will be where the Academy restaurant will be, and on the another slide we see running along Frederick Street, and this is it coming out of the ground where it is now. This was taken a month ago, and what is interest here, there is a link bridge going across the academic fingers, and that is a feature in its own right, because you'll be able to stand there and look across the city, and it's about bringing people into the city. If we can just stay in that image and look at the ground floor running along both York Street and Frederick Street. This was an idea we borrowed from the University of Bocconi in Milan. And when you think of most university activities, while we say it's 24/7, quite a number take place in the autumn, the winter, and the spring. And the first 3 floors are glass, because that will draw people in. People, as they walk past, seeing the lights inside, being drawn into the university building. And then the air bridge, our plan for the air bridge on the left, the link bridge, and now as it's taking shape over on the right. Interesting little story about the link bridge. When we designed this and presented it to the planners, they said we didn't want this because this was developed in the 1970s as a security precaution, so there'd be one entrance to the building. But when we went out into North Belfast, lo and behold, we saw that the mills had many link bridges, particularly at the 5th and 6th floor levels. So what we are doing here is restoring that link bridge. It's almost like Back to the Future. I began this presentation with a quotation. I would like to end it with a painting. And this is a painting which will be familiar to many of you. It is on the 1st floor rotunda of Belfast City Hall. And it's about the proclamation of the city of Belfast in 1613. And there you see the businesses which made Belfast one of the world's leading cities. I also like this painting because it was painted by John Looke, a native of North Belfast, who was a student in the original School of Design and later a teacher there. And this is about Belfast inspiring its citizens. The university campus, we want to inspire our students, and we also want to inspire our businesses, making Belfast a city of opportunity for the next generation. Thank you.
Alastair, thank you very much for that fascinating insight. I knew it was going to be great to be able to see inside that building that we've seen externally growing on the city skyline over the last number of months and years, but to get that insight and to see it all fitting into that wider context was brilliant. Your passion for the scheme and the knowledge that you have of it, and lots of intricate details and aspects of it are really shine through as well. So thank you very much for that. And just I know that also you're very keen and happy to take a few questions, and quite a few have come in. I suppose that the first one, which is almost a sort of $64,000 question, is the point about, and Donna McGovern, who's a recently new member of Belfast Chamber, someone who is invested in a retail business not that far away from the front door of the new campus, part of that sort of wider investment that we might talk about later too, has asked about, I suppose, the certainty of that date. I suspect none of us can be particularly certain about where we might be in terms of virus and implications that might have, but it does appear from particularly those internal shots of the building that the building is going to be physically ready, it would appear, for September. Other things are beyond your control. Is that a fair summary?
It is a fair summary. And in terms of the shots of the interior of the building that you saw there, they were taken November, December time. Even though we've had the Christmas break, things have moved on significantly. We have the top floors of the building are now almost finished. We're moving down from top to bottom, as you would expect, so that the work is not interfering with the earlier work that was done in the upper floors. So from a physical perspective, we're looking forward very much to that, finishing the building by September. The point I made about moving from a building project to a living campus, that's very much in our thinking at the moment. And we had a review of the governance of this building, and the whole focus, we've now introduced a day one readiness group, which is bringing together all aspects of the estate, of the digital world, the digital infrastructure, how we use the campus living on that, and also very importantly, how staff will find that building. And this is interesting because staff have been away from Jordanstown now since last March, and they have been working remotely using the digital infrastructure and the ways of working. And in fact, it's very interesting because in our finance departments in particular, staff love these mountains of paper. And one of the senior members of staff said to us, well, look, we haven't been near those those big mountains of paper for 6 months, and we haven't missed them one iota. So the way of working will change, but we are intent on moving in a phased movement by September 21.
Super, thank you. And I guess that's probably as strong a confirmation as you can give businesses like Donna, who and there's many others who in that area who are really looking forward to this getting open because of the boost it'll bring. Some of the things that jumped out at me in what you were saying was, and I took a note of it, was around the kind of spending power of the scheme. So, 1 to 5 multiplier, and potentially £1.5 billion worth of investment as a result of this. And then the equivalent of the population of Armagh moving into Belfast on a Monday to Friday, as you say, 24/7, many remaining over the weekend. I mean, I think it is probably worth from a business perspective, just to kind of pause a little and talk about that, just the scale of that in terms of what that means for the city. And obviously you're very keen to connect to businesses adjoining the campus and elsewhere around the city. And I take it that the university is quite keen to work with anybody who's listening who wants to, perhaps have a conversation as you move towards reopening about how they can be involved in working with students and promoting their business with students in whatever way that might be. But I think it's just worth, talking about that multiplier effect for a moment. That's a huge amount of people. It's equivalent of a small provincial town, or sorry, I should say Armagh is a city, of course, moving into Belfast. That's quite phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. And I think this is why we have to think that this is more than the university moving a building. We've had a mantra right from the beginning of this project that if all the university does is load up a truck in Jordanstown and move 7 miles down the road, then we've lost a tremendous opportunity. And that's that opportunity of how do we work with the local authorities, work with the departments, work with the businesses now to make this a reality. Student life has changed significantly. There's no doubt about that. Because of the finance, many students go home at the weekend, they have jobs, etc. What we would like to see is students having the opportunities. If you can imagine, students will be having classes during the day, during the evening, and because we have less space in this building we had in Jordanstown, that is common now with all new educational facilities. They are smaller to meet carbon footprint requirements. We're going to be teaching into the evening and possibly more than we've done in the past. So that idea of students nipping out, having a coffee, having something to eat, I would love to see those little bistros and cafes blossoming in this area, and outdoor eating and dining al fresco would be tremendous. So I think there are great opportunities there.
Yeah, it's certainly a boost that sector badly needs. And that sort of leads into, there's a lot of questions have come through about the kind of wider regeneration impact of the scheme. And you touched on residential, and Amanda Quinn has asked a question about, obviously there's about 15,000 students and staff. you talked about the highlighted one of the schemes which has been taken forward by Lacuna Developments, which is run by probably one of our vice presidents, Anthony Best at Belfast Chamber. That stimulus of student accommodation, that has obviously brought quite a few new bed spaces into that area and right across the city. How many, how many, I suppose Amanda's question is, how many students do you think are going to live in the vicinity of the university or in other parts of the city, and how many are going to commute in? And then obviously you touched on that kind of potential difficulty in terms of car parking and all of that. So how many, what percentage of those students do you see living in and around the university?
We will be encouraging students to live in and around the university. Obviously, they're adults. We can't totally influence them, but this is where I think we and the city and businesses have to operate to provide an environment which encourages students to stay there. The last thing we want is the Holy Land effect, where students drive in on a Monday morning, park the car, stay until Thursday and then drive home. This is why we want to make an environment which will be attractive for students to stay over the weekend, and is also then attractive to international students who will want these facilities over the weekend and right across the year. And can I say that Belfast is behind the curve in this one. It'd be good to look at other cities, and Manchester is one of the leading examples of this. Over 20 years ago, when Manchester University said it was merging with what was then called UMass, the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology, creating a university of almost 40,000 students. People said at that time, it's too big, it will never work. But it's interesting how the city of Manchester work with the universities. All the universities in Manchester are based around that Oxford Road, Piccadilly area. There's over 100,000 students there. And when you think about it, the nighttime economy that generates, students living in the area. And this is why I think we want to try and escalate that, accelerate that, of encouraging more students to move into that, the area around the campus, benefit the businesses, benefit the university, and grow Belfast opportunities.
Yeah. I think that's, I'm glad you've highlighted the Manchester example. I think anybody who's interested in seeing how university development can stimulate residential, both in terms of student accommodation and then build to rent or multifamily or whatever people want to call it. It's a really, really good example of that, and it's something I think we should be looking to emulate. In terms of the transport issue, obviously you've been working very closely with government in different guises to try to encourage the use of public transport, and some questions come in about that, and the glider phase 2, which is something we're going to touch on our third event in this series with TransLink. That must be something that, and also active travel, so walking and cycling. Are there plans being developed in terms of trying to maximise that, rather than to try to get away from that sort of Holy Lands effect of people driving in, as you call it?
Very much so, and we have an active engagement with TransLink that has been going on for some time, and it's how we encourage students and staff, indeed incentivize in terms of the sort of packages that would be offered for people to use public transport. Remember that the railways there, the York Street, Yorkgate station, the proposed Gamble Street halt, if that ever comes about, the buses, the main terminus for buses is going to be in the new transport hub, but then the links around to the campus and encouraging people to walk, and health and walking is so important. The one that does concern me very much is the parking, and I've highlighted the Holy Land, where anybody who travels to Queens will know during the week when in a non-COVID situation, it's almost impossible to park. And the last thing we want is for cars to be surrounding and blocking streets. That's already happening in North Belfast. And that's why we need to have lobbying. We want the Belfast Chamber to lobby. We want other businesses to lobby to try and get some resolution to this, because there has to be a parking strategy for that area around the campus in terms of using some of the constraints, double yellow lines on streets, residence parking. It took an eternity to get a residence parking into the Rugby Avenue area of Belfast. I know the department is looking at in North Belfast, but that's only part of the solution. And the last thing we want is, when the university campus opens, to have the residents in North Belfast complaining about cars blocking their area.
Thanks, Alastair. That leads into a question from Gareth Neal, who used to work at the Cathedral Quarter Bid, is now working at Portview Trade Centre in the east of the city, a little bit further away. But he's asked about, is there a wish list, and you mentioned some of the transport, is there a wish list that the university would have in terms of maybe its investment and support from the City Council or Department for Infrastructure, Department for Communities? You mentioned Streets Ahead Phase 3, and that's something which we at Belfast Chamber are very, very keen on as well, because of, you know, that Royal Avenue is it has seen, the image earlier had it flooded. It has slightly better than that, but it's some would say maybe not much better than that in terms of it, in part, in its current state. It's a key gateway in. Obviously, you're going to have these 15,000 students wanting them to access the city centre along that route. Is that something that you see as perhaps towards the top of the wish list, or are there other things that you want to see government, I suppose, bring forward to try to maximise the opportunities that this scheme is obviously going to have?
Yes, there is a wish list, and you've mentioned a number of the elements that are on it. I think one of the leading ones is the Belfast Streets Ahead 3, because it's very clear that you see the footfall in Donegal Pass, and then it falls off beyond Castle Court, and effectively it's a ghost land from Castle Court right through to the junction with York Street, and then it picks up again a little bit. But we would like to see that Belfast Streets Ahead 3 now initiated. The ongoing annual problem of multi-year funding, because the Department for Communities says they don't have the funding in a multi-year basis. Well, could we not allocate part of that funding? We've asked Belfast City Council to look at their contribution and start and use that now. And I think this is where we need a concerted effort by the Chamber, by the bid companies, by Gareth, by others, to get a lobby to ensure that this actually happens. Because I have a concern here. We know that the transport hub is another major development project. We know that the design stage for Belfast Streets Ahead 5 is now taking place. That design will be completed in a short period of time. So there could well then be a competition. Does the money go to Belfast Streets Ahead 3, or does it go to Streets Ahead 5? And I wouldn't like to think that we will see the new university, this spanking brand new glass building opening, and immediately then the streets outside being dug up. We had a similar example of that outside the Maldron Hotel, where the new hotel opens, and then the street opposite James Street South, it's suddenly being dug up. And I think that gives a very bad impression that the city can't coordinate these activities. I hope it can.
Certainly that disjoin sometimes between different arms of government and what the private sector are doing can be concerning at times. But you know, obviously the scheme has stimulated. We touched on the student accommodation and the move towards kind of build to rent accommodation too. And Michael Stewart, our current president, had mentioned some of the. We had an event about 6 weeks ago highlighting Tribeca and Smithfield Yard, which are obviously neighbours of you. You can see the 6th on one of the pictures as well. So there's a huge amount of development happening around this area. So, you know, I think our view would be that plus the need to make sure that we are linking the new university campus into the city centre so that, you know, the widest amount of business can benefit from it. It's something that, you know, we should see that additional investment, which is not in the grand scheme of things. It's a significant amount of money, Streets Ahead 3, but it's not a huge amount in comparison to the benefits that it will bring and just the general uplift that it will give to the area. We've about 10 minutes left. Also, a few questions are coming in thick and fast, so I want to deal with a couple more if we can. John Lunn of Lunn's Jewellers in the city centre, he's asked about that. We talk about the international connectivity and attractiveness of the university, and he's asking about, how does the university see that the scheme and use a new campus in itself will bring in more international students, and even actually, I thought we'd dispense with the Brexit word, but it's still around. But has the Northern Ireland Protocol, he asked, give almost a sort of an additional attractiveness to Belfast as being still part of the United Kingdom, but also without access into the European single market. Do you see the campus and perhaps international events helping to draw more people into Belfast?
I think I mentioned earlier that the campus will be a game changer in that regard. It's an iconic building by its very nature, and that will draw people in. I've been based on the Belfast campus now for quite a number of years, and in earlier days, the coach loads who would arrive of people off cruise ships who would stop, take photographs of the Belfast Cathedral. We see them taking photographs of the new university building, and I think it's a game changer. Universities, by their very nature, we have international contacts right throughout the world, and we have students wanting to come and study. I think the Brexit and the Northern Ireland Protocol does present a new opportunity, and I think we have to work to get the best from that opportunity. I think that in terms of the campus being attractive to local students, I love the story of how one of our staff was coming in the bus into Belfast on a Saturday afternoon, and as the bus came down York Street into the city centre, these young people of 15, 16 were saying, what is that building? And one of them said, oh, that's a new university building. And the other saying, oh, I want to go and study there. So that attractiveness of a new building, and we're seeing that in Belfast. Nuala has done some excellent work with Belfast Boys Model, a school that traditionally wouldn't have sent many boys to higher education. 2 years ago, we had over 50 boys coming into higher education in Northern Ireland, going to university. 44 of them came to Ulster University. So already the physical development is attracting local people. It's undoubtedly going to attract the international audience.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good point to make about particularly those kind of harder to reach communities who have maybe been slightly disconnected from higher education in the past. So I think that's a really good point. There's one very specific question and a few sort of general ones to wrap up. Alastair, Pierce Heath from KPMG has asked about PhD student breakout rooms, and his question is, are they going to be similar to the ones that are currently there at Jordanstown?
The PhD studies, some of them will be, but this is a brand new campus. It's modelled on the best examples that we can take. King's College London was an example of how we saw PhD students. So much of this building, the internal walls will be glass, so that as people walk past, they can see activity taking place, and that stimulates students to think about PhD activity. The PhD activity rooms are spread throughout the building. We saw major clumps of them, but the co-location of the PhD study areas with where the academics are, we're trying to encourage that. And that is why we keep talking about this campus within a building, so that ideas, if you're computer scientists working with the business school, it's on the interface of those ideas that you get the topics for the PhD students. And I think not only their experience, but the opportunity for further PhD study will be enhanced. And remember, those PhD students are there 3 years normally, working right throughout the year, and they are the ones who will want to stay in the city. Many of them want to stay, others will go elsewhere, but they will want a better living experience in that part of the city, and that's where I think business can respond to that opportunity.
Thanks, Alastair. We've talked a few times about the impact of the events of the last year, and you mentioned how staff and students have been off campus now for quite some time. And Rajesh Rana has asked, I suppose, about your thinking around that point. You know, that how, to what extent, and this is something that many businesses are also asking themselves at the minute. To what extent do you think that remote learning and that virtual experience will continue versus that having that physical presence? Obviously, you're building a very large physical presence, and but yet we've had this kind of move towards remote learning. And is it a case that you see some of that remaining, or is it that's just a means to an end, and students will want to be back in that campus atmosphere again?
I think remote learning has helped us maintain the student experience, albeit it's a remote one. But I think there will be a desire to get back, and that is why we've created so many flexible spaces within the building. Because when you go to other universities and you see this happening, Warwick University is the one that comes to mind, where they have developed a student hub right beside the main library, and that student hub is open 24/7. It has little sleep pods within it where you can go and rest for a couple of hours. But you get students coming in there all of the time, 24/7, and it's the social interaction. They want to be in the social spaces. And to be quite honest, this has been a learning experience for us, because our new campus, the Belfast campus, opened in 2007. That was the new building after it was refurbished. And then we had the first phase of the expansion of the new campus in 2015 opening. And we put in a number of what we call these social learning spaces. The ones that are really popular are close to where there are eating facilities. And we've seen this in other universities. If you can get the catering facilities close to the social spaces, and also then link them into areas where academics are throughout the building, that is what creates the dynamic, and that's what we want to build on.
Yeah, and you can't do that virtually. Yeah. I'm interested in the concept of sleep pods. When I was a humanities student, I think there was times there was more sleeping than studying going on, but I never thought the university might encourage that in some way. And John Elliott has asked about, I suppose, about where we've talked a lot about where you're going to, but he's asked about where you're coming from. What's going to happen to the Jordanstown campus?
The Jordanstown campus will be retained for the sports facilities. We have excellent sports facilities there. We also have the big fire testing centre, which is one of the leading ones in Europe. For obvious reasons, you can't move it into the city centre. So there will be some investment in terms of providing a better environment for students who will be working there on a part-time basis, having some studies. For instance, sports studies at the minute is envisaged. Some of that will be taught in the Belfast campus, and then there will be games, the team events taking place out at Jordanstown. We have a very large land holding there in Jordanstown. There's of the order of 175 acres of land there, and we envisage that of the order of maybe half of that, planning applications will be made for alternative uses, primarily housing, but some other uses. And that will go to offset the cost of the £350 million build. And it was very interesting when we went to inform what was the old Newton Abbey Borough Council that we were leaving the area. They would be very keen to have additional housing in the area. It's that area of Jordanstown is a very attractive housing area, and I think they could see the rate income increasing. They were going to get more rates income from housing than they were from the university.
It's always about the money. Finally, then, Alastair, a good question from Kieran Carlin from Carlin Planning, and his question is a simple but probably quite deep one, about, is there anything that you would do differently? And I think what Kieran is, you know, from that kind of maybe not what you would do differently, but perhaps how wider regenerative benefits might have been maximised as a result of this scheme. We're coming towards the end of it in terms of construction, but it has been in gestation for a long period. If you could go back to the start, is there anything in terms of that sort of wider regeneration that perhaps you would do differently, or you would encourage others to do differently?
Yes, there is a lot. As I outlined, 2006, the university receiving the notification that it would have to replace the Jordanstown campus. 2007, we actually asked our students and staff, what do you want to do? The downturn in 2008 was a godsend to us, because at that time we had made the decision we were going to move into Belfast, but we couldn't shout that from the rooftops, otherwise land values would have rocketed. So we went out and we knocked doors and we said, would you sell your land to us? And there were some lovely stories of people phoning the Vice Chancellor and saying, Vice Chancellor, there's somebody asking me to sell their land. Would you not be interested in buying it? And the fascinating thing was, within 18 months, we had every piece of land purchased. That is unheard of in an urban environment. Victoria Square had to use compulsory purchase powers. But we then brought forward our plans, made the announcement to Belfast City Council in 2012, and then the first phase opening in 2015, and the building going on now. Right throughout that process, the number of times when I have been told this is a white elephant and it will never happen. One senior person told us one time, it's not our role to help the university move into the city centre. And I just couldn't believe that. I think this is where the opportunities, the city has to grasp the opportunities of this. And another little anecdote, Joe Berridge, who developed the Belfast regeneration and investment strategy in 2014, when he arrived in Belfast in 2014 and asked what's going on in the city, he was told, oh, there's a university moving in. And he immediately said, my work is done. Belfast has won the lottery, because in American terms, eds, beds and meds drive cities. Eds are universities, meds are hospitals, and beds are tourists. So there's a tremendous opportunity here. And that's why I would like the university and the city and the businesses to work together to address the parking, address the Belfast streets that head 3, create that attractive environment where the university students and staff want to live and benefit the businesses in the city.
Alastair, that's brilliant, and I think the perfect place to leave this. There are a few other questions that have been asked, and we'll maybe follow those up. I haven't just got the time to ask them this morning, but what we'll do is we'll follow those up with yourself and the team afterwards, and maybe get some answers to the people who've asked them. Can I once again, just on behalf of everybody, and particularly also Belfast Chamber, just thank you and Nuala and your colleagues for the time that you have given this morning. And I think everybody, I'm sure on behalf of everybody, found that really, really useful, really insightful. I think we're all even looking forward even more to the campus opening, fingers crossed, hopefully later this year. So thank you for not just this morning, but thank you for everything that you've done down through the years to make this a reality. Can I also thank Ian and the team at Power NI for their support for today and for the remainder of this Building Belfast Back Better series. If anybody wants to take Ian up on his offer of a conversation earlier, please get in touch with ourselves at Belfast Chamber and we can put you together, or drop Ian an email at ian.fraser@powerni.co.uk. I also then just want to remind everybody that our next in this series is next Friday. It's looking at the city deal, which is something which fits very neatly with the university in terms of its leadership on a couple of those projects. So Aisling Finney from KPMG, who's been involved with the city deal right from the start, is going to run through what that means, and again, what the benefits that could bring to our city are going to be. Finally, can I thank Neil and Catherine at MD Events for their help in running this morning, and thank every one of you for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed that and look forward to seeing you next week and at later events. We will have been recording today's session, so we'll send that a link around. Anybody who wants to watch again, or indeed share with colleagues, please feel free to do so. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. I hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you.